This is a podcast by the News Minute, and you are listening to South Central.
Hello and welcome to South Central, a TNM podcast where we put the South at the center. I am Dhanya Rajendran, your host. Remember, a new episode of South Central drops every Friday. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other streaming platforms. And I want to remind everyone, on the comment section or on the description, we always have something called show notes. Now, under show notes, we have all the recommendations which our guests give, the hosts give, and of course, all news stories or documents or books that they refer to. So do look at the show notes. We have this for every episode of South Central. Also, write to us at southcentral@thenewsminute.com. In the end of every show, we try to read a few letters. Some, of course, nice to us, some not so nice to us, but do write to us. It's southcentral@thenewsminute.com. In this week's episode, we look at the dichotomy in the BJP's messaging on Muslims. We then look at the age-old debate, can we really separate the art and the artist? So before we go into these two topics, I want to give you a small reminder. Every week, I tell you to become a paid subscriber of the News Minute and News Laundry. It's not a lot, it's 500 rupees per month. We are a bit short of the number of subscribers we wanted to achieve this month. 40 more would really help us. So those watching South Central, if you can, and if you appreciate our work, if it empowers and educates you, then do become a subscriber. The QR code is there on the screen. If you're watching from outside India, or if you want a link, then the link is on the description. The other small announcement I want to make is that we have had 3 stories on our spirituality series. 1 on Isha Foundation, 2 were on Auroville, which was done by Pooja. And the 3rd story is about to come. It's about a Christian cult in Kerala to which hundreds of people are gravitating towards. They're in fact selling their properties and settling down in this particular place. So my colleague Harita John will bring you that series. We have a small reporting fund for that too. So if you are already a subscriber, you could make a contribution to the reporting fund, or you may make it even otherwise. The link is in the description. Joining us on this episode is Pooja Prasanna, the anchor of Let Me Explain and reporting head of the News Minute.
Hello.
Okay, we are alone in the studio because the 3rd host of the show is far away, back in Kerala. Leena Reghunath, investigative journalist and of course co-host of South Central. Leena?
Hello, Dhanya, reporting for the show from a very rainy Kerala where the monsoons has hit early.
Yeah. And from Delhi, joining us is Seema Chishti, a journalist and writer. She's the editor of the digital news portal The Wire. She was editor of BBC Hindi and also was a deputy editor at the Indian Express, and someone that we really look up to.
Absolutely.
Welcome, Seema, to South Central.
Hello, what a pleasure to be here.
And joining us soon on the show are 2 more guests. One is TM Krishna, a Carnatic vocalist, writer, activist, author, and a Magsaysay awardee. Also joining us will be Anna Vetticad. She's a journalist, a film critique. Okay, so before we go to the 2 topics, Pooja, headlines.
US pauses student visa appointments to begin social media screening. This move could significantly impact thousands of Indian students who are planning to move to the US. And this, of course, apparently came under instructions from the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who instructed consular sections to put this into force immediately.
People will have to really scrub their social media now. Even if you have a picture saying, I support Palestine, there's high possibility that that will be screened.
Yeah, but for me, actually, I went back and I kind of went through my Twitter X timeline. I had made fun of Trump so much over the years. I couldn't believe some of the things that I'd said, but yeah. Moving on to Tamil Nadu, Gnanasekaran, accused in Anna University sexual assault case, has been convicted. The verdict comes 5 months after the crime. This was the case for sexual assault of a student inside the Anna University campus in December 2024. He's been held guilty of all 11 charges and he's a known history sheeter. He already has 7 pending cases against him. Now, DMK picks P. Wilson, poet Salma and Kamal Hassan to enter Rajya Sabha. We had, in fact, in our Power Trip, our weekly newsletter, had broken in March 2024 that an offer has been made from DMK side to MNM chief, and that has come true. And
Wilson, of course, is a no-brainer because Wilson is a lawyer who represents the DMK in the Supreme Court, and they've had multiple victories lately. One is, of course, the Supreme Court slamming the ED in the Tasmac case. then the whole governor judgment, right, where the DMK was able to secure a judgment where the Supreme Court did give some sort of guideline or at least instructions to governors on what to do with bills. So Wilson getting the Rajya Sabha seat again was a no-brainer.
Denied a final goodbye, family of Maoist leader Keshav Rao files contempt plea. The family has accused that Basav Raju, as Keshav Rao was known as, after cremating his body, the petition was filed and it has accused the police of willful disobedience.
So, Seema, I think The Wire first put out the story, right? The Wire spoke to Keshav Rao's brother, considering that first there was an assurance that these bodies would be cremated only with the family presence, and then the Chhattisgarh police went against it.
Yeah, it's very disturbing because the whole idea seems to be to like take away spaces that people have. So all this is part of the whole business of killing, that you actually then make sure that the bodies are also not respectfully kind of handed over, handed back. So the whole idea seems to be a case of almost conquest versus internal enemies. So I think this whole thing is being scripted in that way. And it's been very disturbing because there are very disturbing elements of where talks failed, the way the entire Maoist insurgency, of course, war against the Indian state, etc. You take no prisoners, but still at a time when India had begun to accept the whole business of talks, when it didn't seem like there was such a threat that you necessarily resort to just violence and killing as a strategy that you kind of hail yourself and congratulate yourself for. So I think all of that has been very disturbing. And the way the bodies were cremated without any call for even asking whether they should be handed over somewhere has been done. But none of it seems surprising. And also I think the concern that it would become it would be turned into an icon of sorts by a certain section in the area may have been a genuine concern of the people on the ground.
So we are having a special series on Voicerism on we've been talking to two people who are part of various peace committees. The first interview by Sudipto is out. It's a Professor Haragopal, who's a member of the peace committee. They have been trying to hold talks, but the government clearly is not interested in talks anymore. They have been giving deadlines. I think March 2026 is the newest deadline of eliminating Naxalism given by Amit Shah.
This is the problem, right? When you give such deadlines to eliminate something that is so deep-rooted and started from a cause. Nobody is condoning violence. But how do you give such deadlines and then the pressure on the forces to keep up to that? I just want people to also look at what happened in Karnataka just a couple of months ago. We did discuss this in South Central. We had Shiv Sundar, who's an activist who's worked with Maoists in Karnataka. And just compare, I'm not saying this was perfect, but at least there was a conversation, dialogue over a period of months and years. And they were brought and they will now face the law, right? Many of them will be convicted. They'll face a trial. I think that is... Also, I was watching this podcast where on Newslaundry, where they made one of the panelists said that, every person who's killed in a very violent way, that incident will give birth to at least 20 or 30 more people who are angry against the state. And now look at 26 people who've been killed. So this is going to just start another cycle of violence. Andhra police to hold survey of migrant workers. Over 5 lakh workers from other states are engaged in aqua, catering, hotels, brick kilns and construction in Andhra Pradesh. The Intelligence Task Force District Security Wing Special Branch, Counterintelligence and Law and Order Police have been tasked with this. I don't know to what end they're holding this survey.
They're saying it's after Pahalgam. They've got an instruction from the union government to actually survey anybody who's a migrant worker and have a register.
I worry this will turn into another case of Islamophobia and what have you. But yeah, it is what it is. ANI files defamation suit in Delhi High Court against YouTuber Mohak Mangal, claiming that allegations against news agency made by him in a recent video are false and defamatory. The suit also names comedian Kunal Kamra and Alt News co-founder Mohammad Zubair as defendants for sharing the video on their X handles.
I don't understand how ANI is calling it false, because ANI chief has been sharing tweets where she is clearly saying that, yes, we have right or copyright over these visuals. That's a reason why we are giving these strikes, right? So then how is it false? Because what Mohak Mangal and all the others have been saying is that for even small footages, which is 2 to 8 seconds, they are giving copyright strikes. They are not stopping with the copyright strikes. Now, that's something which YouTube can also mediate, right? But when YouTube is not doing that, ANI is going ahead and telling people to pay between 20 to 45 lakhs, get their subscription. Otherwise, they will go ahead and issue 3 or 4 copyright strikes. Now, the problem with YouTube is if somebody has 3 copyright strikes, then the channel gets banned and you cannot start another channel. So that is I think this is something for YouTube to now come and decide, like, how are you allowing a loophole in your policy to be used by a news giant like ANI?
And their business partners are governments across India, including the union government, because we have seen so many times interviews given exclusively to ANI, visuals being given access to ANI first, even ahead of Doordarshan in many cases. So they have their business partners in place. So it's ridiculous how they've gone ahead. Speaking of business partners, small-eyed Ganesha idols, PM Modi says time to back Make in India and limit foreign goods. I don't even know what to make of this, but I just want to point out the irony that in 2024, China emerged as the second biggest trade partner of India, but the Prime Minister wants us to not buy Ganesha idols that are small-eyed.
How I just am always surprised of how this onus is always placed on consumers and not the government policies. Everything the people has to decide and give up and attain sadhana at that process, I guess. And the government has no responsibility of putting a stop to the trade.
Hey, but they did ban TikTok.
Yes, it is still bad.
Yeah, I think this is wrong at so many levels at what Leena said and what you said. This insinuation, I do know that Indians are the most racist people in the world. But, Mr. Modi has a bully pulpit. He's like he's the tallest leader in the country currently. And if the Prime Minister gets up and kind of talks about Ganesha as being small-eyed, is such nobody, even the largest-eyed people should not accept that. But also there's several Indians in the Northeast, etc., who would have small eyes. So we have the multiple ethnicities, everything that goes into the making of India. So I don't understand why he would even want to go there and say that. And secondly, of course, the economics of it. A lot of exports of India would not be possible. Even this China plus one, so-called, would not be possible if you didn't have Chinese imports. I mean, that's the state of play now. And it's also not something that is peculiar to India. That's the world thing. China is a massive manufacturing giant, which is, it's a world proposition. So for India to pretend that it's somehow away outside this, and as Leena said, small people, small sellers on the roads and all that, radies, etc., can decide to not buy small-eyed Ganeshas. The whole thinking is so harebrained, and it's just being done for clearly CTs or cheek thrills.
And imagine there are delegations of our parliament members who are in countries like Singapore now. I wonder how they'll explain
which is small eyes, medium eyes, large eyes. It's just so it's revolting to actually have a prime minister who's going about saying these things.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we are done with the headlines. We'll go to our first topic of discussion. When India launched Operation Sindoor, the Modi government also staged a spectacle. We also saw that as a Muslim woman officer, Colonel Sofia Qureshi, along with a Hindu woman officer, Wing Commander Vyomika Singh, addressed the media, seemingly projecting unity. But the problem is that the ruling party could not keep up this facade of cohesion for too long. First, we had a Madhya Pradesh BJP leader Vijay Shah referring to Sofia Qureshi as a sister from the community of terrorists. Then there's BJP MLC Ravi Kumar, who has questioned the DC, or who's known as collector in other states, Fauzia Taranum IAS officer, asking if she had come from Pakistan. Such hateful comments from BJP leaders are reported almost on a daily basis from across states. Now there's one more thing which has been added to the contradictory mix. That is that the BJP find itself compelled to somehow align with figures like Hyderabad MP Asaduddin Owaisi. Now, Owaisi in the last few weeks has emerged as a staunch defender of Operation Sindoor, and he has sort of become the government's chosen Muslim to question Pakistan. He's also part of one of the parliamentary delegations which have gone to various countries. So on one hand, the government and the BJP is publicly championing this narrative of inclusive nationalism, which features a handful of Muslim leaders or perhaps a Muslim officer like Sofia Qureshi. But on the other hand, its party members and leaders continue to make deeply communal and exclusionary comments. So that's the dichotomy that we are seeing now. First thoughts, Pooja.
Since you mentioned Owaisi, I want to take off from there. In the past, we have criticized him for some positions that he's taken. And right now, the way he's championing the Modi government's, cause is also has come under scrutiny. But I want to say it is so difficult to be a vocal Muslim politician in India, right? Today, I'd say, but it's traditionally been very difficult. I wonder what Owaisi would have faced, even though he comes from the kind of privilege that he comes, he's almost aristocracy in Hyderabad. I wonder what all he would have been called, what all he would have, been accused of had he not toed the government line. And imagine then the plight of your average Muslim on the road, the kind of slurs, because we saw post Pahalgam, the kind of attacks on Kashmiri students, Kashmiri vendors across India, and the kind of just general Islamophobia we've seen. In fact, Al Jazeera had a report which showed 20 plus songs, Islamophobic songs. This was a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure more have been added to that playlist, which were very popular with lakhs of views on YouTube. YouTube has allowed them to stay there. And all of them, like the pattern, the theme being, oh, we did a mistake allowing Muslims to stay back in a country. You had your own country. Why couldn't you go there? And look at how we're paying for the mistake of allowing you. So, I mean, BJP can pretend all it wants outside of India, but this is the reality of Muslims in India today.
But I think the question is not about Owaisi's politics, right? Owaisi can choose to support Operation Sindoor. I mean, he has made very strong comments against the Pakistan Prime Minister, all that he can do. But the question is on the BJP's politics, where today it is convenient for them to co-opt somebody like Owaisi. For example, I saw a journalist who is known to be pro-BJP put on his social media that, I have always followed Owaisi's politics and he's always been questioning these things. Now, till today, nobody thought of those positions which Owaisi took, right?
He suddenly became a good Muslim, and BJP has always played this good Muslim, bad Muslim. Kalam is acceptable. Owaisi was not up until now, but now he's crossed over.
Seema?
So I think this goes a little beyond that. Like the BJP has always been straddling this Gandhi in London, but Godse in Gwalior. Which is okay. So you go out, they never cite Savarkar and they never cite We Are Our Nationhood Defined when they go for these grand meetings and various hugging meetings with Mr. Modi meets all these top leaders. But back home, it's very different politics. That was easy. I think what the Pahalgam attack, the terror attack, and the subsequent decision by India to attack 9 places in Pakistan and to have somebody like Asim Munir, who's the exact counterpart of the Hindu Rashtra folks back in India, has put them in a particularly difficult position because now, there's like a tear in the space-time warp, if we were writing speculative fiction. That the two worlds are kind of crash and merge into one, because now they have to constantly on a daily basis. It is secular India that is the only thing that'll get you hosannas abroad. Why India is respected, whether in the subcontinent or the world, is not because it's some, regular nonsensical South Asian disaster where ethnic majoritarianism rules, but because it's a spectacular kind of a vision, plural, democracy, willing to live with its imperfections and, setting the ideal. I mean, so many of our Pakistani friends are so envious of India on how we've managed to pull it off and just the whole audacity of us in 1950. And now the BJP has to rely on what it dislikes a lot to project it on a daily basis. So I was delighted to hear the word secularism coming from the MEA podium from a long time. And it was a delight to see Colonel Sofia Qureshi, Colonel Vyomika Singh do those briefings. But I think what Professor Mahmoodabad also says in his post, that we'd like that to filter right down to the taluka or to the ground level of the BJP workers. But they have the reality of a politics that almost auto goes into this completely reflexive other Hindu Rashtra mode anytime there's a terror attack. So I think it's a very interesting moment and a very difficult one for the BJP and the ruling party. And that's why I think Shashi Tharoor at one level and Mr. Owaisi at another level are very useful and have to be deployed. And if I may just take 20 seconds more to say that Mr. Owaisi is not quite in the Kalam league. Mr. Kalam is a Veena-wielding, Gita-reading Muslim who's cast in a different mold. Mr. Owaisi is not. He kind of wears certain clothes, which he always appears publicly in those particular clothes. Like that, he's to be kind of projected as an Indian. So this is the way Mr. Owaisi is coming out now is kind of different from Mr. Kalam or the other good Muslims.
Let me also place here that, in the last 1 year, in the 2024 India Hate Lab report, there was noted that there was a 75% increase in the hate speeches in India, and most of it has been from the ruling BJP party. And this, they deploy it and they indulge in it around the Indian elections. So the 2024 elections or the state elections, there is an increased incident of, blaming, indulging in hate speech so that the vote bank is garnered. And that is what has so far fueled the BJP's politics, right? The love jihad, the vote jihad that, Adityanath in 86 hate speeches in 2024 when the elections being fought in UP. That is the kind of narrative that they have built, and suddenly they want to step away from there, and they want to present this very secular India in front of a global population. But when it comes to regional elections, when it comes to where they need to win and get into parliament, they'll still go back to those narratives, and we'll see these hate speeches playing up like the cauliflower memes and all those that we are seeing in the online spaces too. Right, Dhanya?
Yeah. So I just want to say this. I don't think they actually want to step away from it, Leena. This is my interpretation. They just want to pretend like Seema rightly pointed. They just want to pretend. But, the right-wing ecosystem didn't get the memo, right? So they went on with weaponizing everything they can, as they have been, including your festival to clothing to food to advertisement, literally what have you, right? They went on business as usual. Somewhere the communication got missed. Now, when these headlines, like Dhanya was wondering earlier, when people sitting in other countries read these headlines, I wonder what justification a Tharoor or an Owaisi or Tejasvi Surya, who's in African countries, can provide now.
In fact, Tejas Surya also held, I think, a procession after the Operation Sindoor, in which there were a lot of, I don't know whether he himself said it, but a lot of communal stuff was said directly and indirectly. Now, I personally believe that it's a tightrope walk for the BJP, right? One, you have to project this face of cohesion, that all Indians are standing together, which is Muslim, Hindu, Christian, whatever, everybody's together. But at the same time, they cannot get away from their domestic politics, because at the end of the day, that is what keeps them going. And their cadre is not going to be happy at a secular face. Every time, for example, when Narendra Modi, for example, goes for an iftar, opposes a Muslim leader, the first backlash actually comes from his own supporters saying that, why are we trying to be secular? So the BJP continuously has to feed that monster. And that is the reason why, for example, when a Vijay Shah questions Sophia Qureshi's identity and the Supreme Court itself then clamps down on it, the BJP does nothing to him. Because that's the message the BJP is sending down to its cadre, that you can say things like Vijay Shah did, nothing will happen to you, because there is a silent endorsement to it.
That's the bedrock of their existence, of their policy.
Look at the cauliflower poster. For example, when the BJP Karnataka handle shared the poster of, basically it was to celebrate the killings of Naxals. So there's tombstone for Naxalism. Amit Shah is standing over the tombstone smiling, and he's holding a cauliflower. For a lot of people, including me, I was not very sure as to what the cauliflower stood for. And now as I read, I understood that the cauliflower is basically reminiscing about the Bhagalpur massacre in 1989, where almost 100 Muslims were killed. And apparently, to hide the evidence, cauliflower, they're plants?
The vegetables,
flowers. Yeah, sorry, I'm very bad at plants and vegetables. That was planted over. So that is why every time there is a small riot, I've seen a lot of these handles post the saying that now it's time for cauliflower farming. And imagine, despite all the backlash, that poster has not been taken down. While you're sending all your MPs to these countries to talk about how India is standing against Pakistan together, you have an official handle of the BJP putting out this poster. There is a backlash. Absolutely nothing. They're not even deleting it. So that is a message the BJP is giving, right? This facade of cohesion is for the rest of the world, but as it trickled down to our cadre, it's business as usual.
No, what I want to point out here is that BJP has been getting better and better at this art of duplicity, that around Christmas you go against have a Christmas Eve with the Christian leaders. You will talk nicely, you will condemn the violence, but when you condemn violence against Christians, you will not take examples from India, but you will take some international examples and quote it there, and you'll say that this is very good, but he'll not say anything that will stop his cadre going forward and indulging in violence against the Christian community around the Christmas. And this has been happening for quite some time now. And the United Christian Forum, I think in 2024, they presented a report saying that 834 such incidents has happened in 2024. Wire, I think, had put out a big report on how many Christian violences has happened. But then Modi will still still indulge those leaders, still condemn. And then in the back door, he'll brand the Christmas Day as a day for good governance. Was that what it was? They tried to brand the Christmas Eve as. So they walked this very tricky path of duplicity in indulging in keeping their core happy, while also, taking this powerful communities when they need to win elections. They try to do this narrative all the time.
Where I think it's like really dangerous is that I think a lot of people are out of control. So, we would like to believe that they have this full control on all sections of opinion on the right wing. That's not true, because, we are at the 11th year of having fostered this slowly and allowed this conversation to grow. Social media has its own exponential growth. That logic has been crazy. There's also been like right-wing growth globally that has fed this. So now you're sitting on a very significant section of the voters who vote for the BJP, but who are not really in their control. So you'll periodically have the RSS saying things like, listen, under every shivling, under every masjid, there's no shivling there. That's only because they're having their own problems. So it's a very dangerous situation where a whole lot of people are also out of their control, whom they have to pander to, the trads or whatever you call them. And there is this great kind of a problem you have in a young country with such kind of leadership, with the messaging it does continuously at its helm, which would like to keep it at like a Goldilocks fine thing of right-wing suitability. But life unfortunately doesn't work like that. So people are constantly going off, and you had this very embarrassing incident where again the two worlds met. A favorite of the BJP, a senior journalist or a favorite guest, actually referred to the top leader of Iran as a suar ka bachcha, or the son of a pig, which is a very clear kind of a slur. It's a Muslim slur, and that was hurled, and I think the Indian embassy in Iran had to come out and say things, etc. So pretty much like when the Gaza killings first started and you had the maximum Islamophobic hate being generated from India, and the world really started noticing it then. So more than like pro-Hindu, it's like Islamophobic and full of hate, violence and rape threats. So I think everything is like galloping so fast, but moments like these kind of bring it to Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah and the government store. And what's dangerous also about this cauliflower meme in particular is, here's the home minister of the country looking quite happy in that tweet as well, and standing over a tombstone of Naxalites who have very little to do with the Bhagalpur kind of a massacre. And Bhagalpur also, the cauliflower reference is about supposedly a police officer who led the mob that went on to kill about 116 Muslims in 1989. And they planted saplings of cauliflowers over them in order to conceal it. And it was only 25 days later when a senior district official, a civilian official, went there with some people, and some people pointed out, some survivors who probably knew or who suspected it, or there must have been a smell or something. And then they dug the cauliflower thing out, and they found, they unearthed the massacre. So it's kind of very disturbing in many levels. So here is the topmost officer of the Home Minister, standing in this triumphalist kind of way, and as a quote tweet to a party that contests elections, the CPI-ML, which is not the CPI Maoists, and you do lol, salam, comrade. So, sure, taste, of course, like it scores very low on the taste meter, but I think beyond that also the celebration of death. Not about ending a problem, even if Naxalism is looked at just that, but and then trying to conflate it with Bhagalpur, which is going to polls, it's in Bihar. So, it's just too clever by half in ways that diminishes, I think, the standing of the BJP in ways that they probably don't see, but see it as a good thing.
My last thought on this, Dhanya, is again caught in the middle of all this politics abroad, politics at home, is the Indian Muslim, right? Because what the Modi government is portraying to countries outside has nothing to do with reality. All you have to do is just take a look at the policies over the last 10 to 11 years, more recently the Waqf bill, and also what their supporters, their fan base is doing. The reality for Indian Muslims, privileged or otherwise, does not change. And this includes even journalists, right? The kind of, in right-wing channels, the kind of, wrath, the kind of Islamophobia they face on a daily basis does not change. If anything, it gets amplified further. So who's going to speak for them?
So I was in an event yesterday with Saeeda Hamid, who was part of the Planning Commission. She was part of the National Commission for Women. Before the Sachar Committee, actually, they had done a survey from the National Commission of Women on how Muslim women in India are faring. And she, in her latest book called Drop in the Ocean, she says that I would like to believe that the Sachar Committee followed our report in the National Commission for Women. So during that event, she actually got emotional. She was quoting Faiz Ahmed's poems and saying that I would like to see hope. But the problem is, as a Muslim, I also feel like every day is burdensome, right? Like every day, it's very difficult to even breathe. But sometimes I wonder that when all this is happening, would the opposition in India is also now caught in the mix, right? They are not, just like the people. I feel there's this moral confusion that when something like an Operation Sindoor happens, you have to stick to what the government is saying. You have to support the government, or you have to just go with what they're saying. Otherwise, your patriotism is under question.
No, that's fine. But it's a simple choice, right? Do you have to keep asking Indian Muslims to prove their loyalty again and again and again, 20 times a day? No. As citizens, we can make that choice, start from there, and put pressure on those who are trying to tell us to ask of them, ask these questions of them. Why did Kashmiris have to bear the brunt for what terrorists did? Why did Indian Muslims across have to bear the brunt? There's no answer. How is your ideology different from those terrorists who now, it has been established again and again, did ask people for their religion and target people based on their religion? If you're targeting people based on their religion, how is your ideology different?
And this thing of when should a question be asked, right, Seema? Because we have got you on the episode, I have to ask you. The wire faced the block because of asking a question which people thought, okay, too quickly you asked that question. Was the Rafale shot down? And now I think you also published an article recently saying, when can questions be asked?
When should we be asking? Yeah, Preet Panikar's, yeah. I'll just a bit about the wire blog. That was actually a very simple curation desk piece which put together what the Washington Post and Reuters was saying with all the disclaimers of the Indian government, etc. and all that. We were not wrong on facts, nothing. But the Reuters piece and the Washington Post piece was still up on online. But because they wanted that story taken down for national security reasons, the entire site was brought down because you don't have the wherewithal now to bring down a story, which was just completely wild because nobody approached us for bring the story down. We did bring the story down, but we said we cannot bring the story down without an explanation. We'll have to explain why we brought the story down, which, it was a Barbara Streisand effect classic. Anyway, we did that. Number two, I think they did that because it had the imprimatur of an Indian portal saying it, even if it's reporting. So there you could dismiss CNN and Reuters as evil Videshis, but you could not do that maybe necessarily. You could have a free to read English Indian portal saying that. So I think where the opposition has really messed up their own lives and their own politics, I hope it eases up later, is they should at every stage, almost like you kind of repeat, dharmic slogans periodically when you start your work, you need to continuously say that a defense of the state of India or the Indian position is not a defense of the government. But that's where they seem to have walked into a plot of everybody being a champion for Mr. Modi. So you have all these delegations with these very fiery MPs from opposition parties towing a complete government line without realizing that it's upon them to do the fine job of saying we're here to defend the government or the Indian position and not the government. Because the political failure is the government's. We're grateful to the Indian Armed Forces who secured us. We're fine. It's a government who's in trouble because their kind of rhetoric and their thing has kind of collapsed. I think the opposition kind of didn't do that, and that was a problem. And where the problem comes is if the opposition does that, then you build space within the country for that kind of a debate. Currently, anyway, media, that's supposed to be media's job. Anyway, media's not doing that. So even if a couple of serious opposition leaders, like pretty much they did in the run-up to the 2024 elections, if they've done that, that creates space for people thinking clearly about this, that a critique of this is a political critique, which is my duty to do as a patriotic Indian. It's my job to do and my duty to do. So I think that abdication is going to cost us a bit for the moment. I still think people are kind of asking questions. I think it is absolutely the right time to ask questions. Jammu and Kashmir is a union territory. The job of catching those people, securing them, securing tourists is squarely Mr. Modi's, the Home Minister, who two held meetings before that, and the LG, Mr. Manoj Sinha, because it's a union territory. They have even asked Omar Abdullah, the Chief Minister of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, to leave the room in those security meetings they had just, a few days or a few weeks before this heinous attack on tourists. So in order to just make sure that the phrase Pahalgam does not dominate the discourse, you just have this whole plethora of Sindoor happening. And with the opposition not coming, being able to really come out and say that, spot the difference between this and spell it out.
Well, I think this is not the end of it. Today, Dhainik Bhaskar has a report that Modiji's Modiji's party is going to send a Chutki Sindoor. What is it? What do you call it when you're putting it in a small thing? Whatever, in that
It's small bit of Sindoor.
Yeah, it's going to come to every house. A kutti dabba of Sindoor is going to be sent to every house. I think before Ayodhya Ram Mandir, they did send the
Akshata, the turmeric rice.
Yes, so something like that is going to come. But spectacle after spectacle is what we are having. Thank you very much, Seema, for joining us on this.
And just so nice to be with you on the podcast. Thank you, Leena, Pooja, and Dhanya.
So now on to our second debate, which is, should an artist's work have value in its own right, no matter what sort of life the artist has led? What if the artist is accused of hate, of sexual harassment, sexual assault, or anything else? What if they've hurt others and it is publicly known? How should organizations react? How should journalists react? And how should the audience react? Now, the reason for discussing this today is that the CPM General Secretary, the freshly elected CPM General Secretary, M.A. Baby, recently watched a movie and told everybody that you should go watch it. It's a family entertainer. The movie is called Prince and Family, and it stars actor Dileep, Malayalam actor, who's of course accused for being a mastermind in a case where an actor was abducted and sexually assaulted in a moving car. So there are many questions which I personally would like to pose to General Secretary of the CPIM, M.A. Baby. First thing is that what is the necessity to endorse this movie at a time when that trial is at its end? We are now looking at the final arguments in the case. The trial can come to an end at any point. What is the point of making this endorsement now? Is that not sending a wrong signal? And the second thing is that this movie, Prince and Family, has got two actors. They are Bindu Panikar and Siddiq. Now, it's very important to understand why it's problematic even further, because Bindu Panikar and Siddiq are two important witnesses in this case, both of whom turned hostile. Bindu Panikar, in fact, according to the prosecution in the case, had become hostile. She was someone who knew perhaps of the alleged motive, but in court she said that she did not know of the motive. She had not acted with Dileep for many years, and after she turned hostile in court, she has been given opportunities to act with Dileep again. So this movie, in fact, when the poster of this movie first came out, I was struck by the fact that not only does it have Dileep, but it has two people who are crucial witnesses in this case who turned hostile. So did the CPM General Secretary not know about this? When there is a history like this, does it not send a wrong signal when the CPM General Secretary is endorsing the movie of Dileep? Lots of questions really, but I think the larger issue before us is the question which everybody will have to deal with after this verdict is out also. Can we separate the art and the artist? So I'm going to first go to the artist in the panel today, Mr. TM Krishna. Thank you for joining us on South Central. And what are your thoughts about all this?
First, on this specific case, I think there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Mr. M.A. Baby should not have been saying anything about the movie. Anything about, and to go about saying it's a family movie, it's good for people in the family to go together. It has some very simple, good values. I think these are all deeply, deeply problematic statements to be making on a film where the actor is accused of very serious crime and the case is ongoing. So there's no question that those statements were completely out of line and coming from a person of power. That's very important in this. It's not just some person saying it. It is the General Secretary of the CPM saying it when there is such a huge case that is ongoing. I don't think he had any business saying anything of that order. Now, this other bigger question about separating the art and the artist, again, I think that has been the biggest lie that artists and the world of art has told the world, that you need to separate the art and the artist. Let's even look at it artistically. whenever say I make great art, I make music and the music is great, you directly associate with me, the person. So the art is coming out of me, the human being, my life experience. So therefore, your experience even artistically is credited to who I am or what I make. And therefore, there you don't in fact separate it. You make it very clear that this is the individual who is giving you that aesthetic artist experience. Therefore, even in terms of just art making, I don't think you can separate it. So when it comes to something that is messy, something that is problematic, this is an escape pod. This is a parachute that artists use and the world of art uses in order to continue to work with, to deal with those artists. And always remember, the person who is saying this is a person who is never a survivor, never the victim, never the person who has felt or experienced the onslaught from these artists. It is onlookers who have nothing at stake who comfortably can say this and saying, separate the two. So, and as a man, for example, I am never going to understand what sexual abuse is, what it means to be hounded by a world of misogyny. And I can very easily come up and say, no, you separate the two. But it is the people of different genders or women, all these people who are the primary targets of all this kind of sexual abuse, rape, etc., etc. So I am in fact in no position to even say anything about it. Therefore, this idea of separating it is, I think, just wrong, simply wrong. And you yourself used a phrase, art in its own right. What is this own right of art? Where does that come from? It comes from the individual. So the art is made by the individual, and separating the two is very disturbing sociologically. And what about the economic consequences? Every time you participate in the art making of an artist who is accused of serious misbehavior, crimes, etc., you are contributing to the economic well-being of that individual and also contributing to the power equations that the individual has. In the last 4 or 5 years, beyond this case, I have seen this happening across board, that a form of societal rehabilitation is happening towards all these people accused of very, very horrible misbehavior, sexual harassment. Slowly, somehow, a group of people start coming up. You see them appearing in social media. Suddenly, opportunities are opening up. You suddenly, kind of a very slow way in which their presence is normalized, support is got. They start playing the political game by making sure that they're supporting the people in power, irrespective of the political party. So there's a systemic way in which these people are made to be just normal people. And whatever they've been accused of is slowly kind of pushed under the carpet or not discussed or ignored. So we have to be very, very careful, I think, in, trying to separate these two. I believe that the art of the person who is accused of any of these things, it could be any other, for example, hate crime. It could be the words they use. It could be Islamophobia. I think their art has to be problematized along with the individual that they are. I think that is very, very important.
So, I understand where you're coming from, but I also feel that we have to segmentize this, right? One is how do people in power react to this? For example, an MA baby in this case, or let's say a film association, or a director who's going to cast Dilip or anybody in a movie, or perhaps a Carnatic society which gives bookings for all artists during the Me Too movement. There were so many Carnatic artists, remember, who were accused of sexual harassment and abuse, but they continue to perform in sabhas. So I think there's responsibility on the sabhas or associations or organizations, one. And the second aspect is, how does the audience react to it, right? Should they separate the art and the artist? Because, for example, M.A. Baby's own justification was that the director of this movie is somebody called Binto Stephen, and this is his first movie. And he went to watch his movie. He's saying it was not to promote Dilip, but because it was the director's first movie. So then again, the debate starts, right, Anna, that a movie is not just one actor's. It is not just Dilip's. Binto Stephen is producing it, directing it, somebody's producing it. So then how do you, punish the entire movie set for it? These are conversations which are ongoing now.
It's actually not as complex as those who choose to patronize such artists will make it out to be. The fact remains that a film starring Dilip will be sold as a Dilip film. If the film succeeds, the greatest benefit will be not actually to the producer. If the producer is not Dileep, it will not be to the director. The greatest benefit will be to Dileep because of there will be a massive increase in his fee for the next film. We know. So let's not pretend that everywhere in the world, but more so in India, in our commercial cinema, it is the man who plays the lead in a film who makes the most money of it, and for the rest of his life derives the greatest benefit from it in terms of not just money, but also in terms of stature and legacy. So let's not pretend that that is not the case. Second, I have a question for M.A. Baby. Is he a film critic? I can think of only one kind of individual in this world who has a compulsion to watch a Dileep film. And that's a film critic, because you might be professionally required to review the film because your organization asks you to do so. Having said that, I know that the more senior you get, the more freedom you get, and you could even as a film critic assert yourself and say, look, even reviewing this film is legitimizing this man. I'd like to make that choice. However, the only person for whom there is that question is the film critic. M.A. Baby is not a film critic. M.A. Baby is not a film journalist. M.A. Baby is not a politician like, let's say, Arvind Kejriwal, who at one stage used to routinely go and watch films. Not that I would excuse it if Kejriwal were to go and watch a Dileep film and start praising it. But M.A. Baby has no such excuses. So why was it necessary? Let us stop pretending and let us stop accepting his pretense that it was because he wanted to support a young man. Again, he says he went to support the director who is a young man. Did he have to speak publicly about it? Did he then have to write a long Facebook post endorsing the film and excusing himself? He has made all of these choices and he is choosing. Now, third, while of course M.A. Baby is more accountable than most people, I think generally speaking, the fact that Dileep has had so much success even after the allegations were made against him, even after the charge sheet, and even after we have seen public displays of his efforts to project himself as a family man, the PR that he has done, magazines, a woman's magazine putting him on the cover, even if after all of this, the audience has gone and repeatedly watched his film, the audience is also accountable. As a society, we are accountable. And as Krishna said very clearly, and I fully agree with him, this business of claiming that you separate the art from the artist is one that artists will raise only when it is convenient to them. Because if all art and all artists wanted us to always separate the art from the artist, why do they have self-referential art? Most recently, and Dhanya, we had discussed one of my articles recently, an investigation I had done into censorship. And there was a Bengali filmmaker who told me he made Kabuliwala with Mithun Chakravarti. And the director, Suman Ghosh, told me this very clearly, that he intentionally cast Mithun Chakravarti in that role because Mithun is a BJP man. And he wanted to cast Mithun in the role of a very positive Muslim figure to make a point to the public. Casting choices are making a point to the public a lot of the time. Casting directors and producers in their casting choices are very often blatantly openly telling us to not separate the art from the artist. So how is it when it suits their convenience, we must do so? And a third point, give me a break. If tomorrow Salman Khan were to do a film in which he produces, he writes and he directs, in which he plays the part of an activist who is opposed to domestic violence, are you telling me that as a film analyst and critic, I must separate the art from the artist, when this is a man about whom not only have there been allegations, but one woman, Aishwarya Rai Bachchan, has come on the record to talk about emotional, verbal and physical abuse during their relationship? What kind of an idiotic film critic would I be if I am not going to give you the context of his personal life being also a part of an extension of what the film is saying, because if a film producer and director decide that they want to cast him in such a role, they are also helping him with image building. There can be no other reason for it. So I fully disagree with those who say you must separate the art from the artist. There may be situations in which one wasn't aware in the past about the artist's background. That becomes complicated. What if you loved a film or a piece of music and later discovered that the artist's personal life was a complete contradiction to what they were saying in their art? That's where it becomes complicated. There is absolutely no complication in the matter of Dilip, and MA Baby deserves no excuse.
I agree. I just want to also point out that I am amused that Anna thinks that Salman Khan's movies are art in any form, but and that's a different conversation. But let's not, like everybody pointed out, this is whitewashing of Dilip. It's not an off-the-cuff remark. It is not endorsing anybody else. Here, you asked the question of what happens because it's a team, right? A movie as opposed to, let's say, a painting or a song is a team effort. So should others be punished? I think that's what you were trying to get to. In this case, I don't know when the production of this movie started. But if you know of what he's been accused of, if you've been following the conversation, as I assume most of them have been, and you choose to be a part of that project, then yes, you too should be penalized for, whatever Dilip has or has not done. So I think, yes, all these excuses people make, but what is the expiry date on someone's crime? In this case, of course, it's a far harsher crime that we're talking about. But in some other case, say a racist comment, till what time can we hold it against them? Since we're talking about movies, I can never watch a Paresh Rawal movie, though he's a brilliant actor, or an Anupam Kher movie, without all the things that they've been saying, the Islamophobia, the hate speeches that they've made, running at the back of my head. I don't care who the main lead of that movie is. For me, it is something that impacts my viewing experience. The reason is because as the audience, the way I relate to art is also very emotional, right? It's not science, it's not maths. Art is autobiographical. So your trauma, your lived experience, your ideology, everything impacts what you do. So for me, I cannot separate the two. Yes, if I didn't know before, of course, then what you do about it. J.K. Rowling, for example. A lot of my childhood fond memories are attached with Harry Potter, right? We used to all look forward to the next Harry Potter book. But now I cringe every time I think about it. It is something that I'm conflicted about.
But yeah, so I just want to take off from this J.K. Rowling. I'm a unapologetic Harry Potter fan. But now,
welcome to the club.
I am not very sure whether I should tell children around me to read Harry Potter, because I like the books for what they are. But I'm also conflicted whether, so for example, my son, when I tell him Vedant, read a book, he now makes fun of me back saying, shall I become like J.K. Rowling then? Because he knows what she's in the news for. So that's his way of getting back to me, saying, don't tell me to read books because the author could be like this. So I'm a little conflicted. I just want to bring in Leena also. Leena, the other conversation here is, okay, let's say we are talking all this about Dilip, but the judgment is going to come soon. And for any crime, right? If you're looking at the system of justice and courts, let's say he gets acquitted, then what happens?
Dhanya, before I get to that question, this whole question of how long should we penalize a person, our history is replete with incidents like this. This quote is often attributed to Pablo Picasso, that it is not enough to know the artist's work. One must also know when he did them, why he did them, how and in what circumstances. Something that Pablo from his life. And then this is the man who has been known to be a womanizer, who has known to be a misogynist, who's famously quoted as saying there is only two things that women are useful for, is either to be a goddess or a doormat. Many of us important partners in life, they've either killed themselves or gone into mental depressions and histories like that. So, and Pablo is one case that I'm citing. There are histories replete with men, celebrated figures in art, in politics, in literature, who has been accused of sexism. And now when I go to view his art in MoMA, I always wonder, what is it that I should go and judge that art by what the man was, what it stands for, or by the beauty of what that art itself is. And this has also, some of these questions of how and questions. But in case of Dilip, let's be very sure, this case is still under trial in court. A verdict is expected, and that's where the statement that a politician makes, that head of a party makes, it becomes so important to judge. We are not talking as if historically time has passed, so as we conveniently forget what has happened with the artist in question here. This is a case in court, and that is where somebody prominent with political clout is going and endorsing this man. But also when we were having I was part of curating the literature festival in Wayanad, as we have often discussed here, and we have then, because this was coming in a period when there was a lot of accused who we were thinking of in literary world, that we were thinking of being panelists, and we were like, what is the policy? And we seriously thought, and we talked to a lot of people who have been involved in this, and then we reached a conclusion that pending trial, or once accused, we will not platform someone who has been accused of such a crime. But if there is an allegation, of course, in that same year, and giving it a 1-year cooling period, we will not platform such a person. So that kind of a moral policy. But how long? Once somebody has been accused, it has not gone into a court of law. Now, every person who accused someone need not go and seek justice from a court of law. It's up to the survivor to decide what form of justice that person wants to seek. If the only justice that person wants to seek is to name that person who have harassed them and let that information out into the public world for anybody who's coming and working with that artist tomorrow to know, then that freedom should be left to the survivor. And if the survivor doesn't want to take it to a court of law, then she's open to it. And as a policy, as a festival curator or somebody who looks at harassment cases here, what I would say is that then we'd either wait for some credible longer process to come into court of justice, and we'll give it a 1-year cooling period to know what kind of harassment cases or what is being in the public opinion place. But beyond that, we will not be able to forever cast an artist aside, because at one point of time somebody raised an accusation. So that is something as a festival organizer we have to do. But if a court of law just looks at the case and says that, okay, this person is convicted of it, then we forever bar that person.
Mr. Krishna, I want to come to, I have two thoughts which I want you to address. One is what Leena was saying, yes, how long, right? How long? And the second, recently a friend of mine sent a video, a satirical video, which her roommate made for her. My friend is a journalist. So this video is where the roommate is saying that, oh, I want to watch a movie. So the journalist friend says, don't you know this actor is accused of something? She's like, oh, okay, fine, then I'll watch his OTT series. So the friend says, don't you know the director is accused of something? Then she says, oh, okay, fine, I'll go for this play. Don't you know the producer is accused of something? And finally, this roommate says, okay, I will maybe look at Picasso's paintings. And she's like, don't you know problematic, which was there in Brooklyn Museum, showed how Picasso's paintings are also problematic, and so is life. So the onus on the audience, right? Sometimes I feel it's too overwhelming for them. So two things. One is how long, and second is that onus on the audience.
So I want to address the second part first, because you also spoke about that when you responded to this idea, what do I do with J.K. Rowling, for example, right? And I think that in a way that you did hint on the problem is that you are struggling with it, that you are grappling with it. I think that's what we expect out of the audience. We expect the audience to struggle with the problem, to say, what do I do? I mean, you have read J.K. Rowling. I'm not saying the audience should come out and say, it's clear to me. It is not clear. Let's be very clear. It is complicated. I'm not very clear in my head what I do, but the fact that you're willing to struggle and grapple with it is a recognition that there is a problem in the individual and the art making of the individual. This is the basic expectation we can have of society. I'm not saying everybody in society must be able to take I will not watch, I will not listen position. But I'm saying, can you not whitewash it? Can you say they're all separate? It doesn't bother me. I can just happily sit in my home and watch an OTT show and then say, oh, it was lovely. No, you must come out of that saying, I'm confused. I am disturbed. I don't know the whole notion of something being, I think it's an artistic question, beauty versus ugliness in some way, right? And how does one really negotiate? And I think that is a learning experience. I think as a society, unfortunately, we are not mature enough to deal with it on an everyday basis. For example, I mean, you can take a larger spectrum. Just look at the Islamophobia. Look at the hate that goes on. We just brush it aside and just go on with life. Isn't this also an example of that we are not disturbed? We are not bothered, that we are not saying that I'm struggling. So I think in a way you have actually answered the question saying struggle with it. Find it difficult. Maybe you will make the wrong choice. Maybe you will buy the ticket for a film one day. I'm not going to hold that against you, but can you come out of the film and tell me, you know what, it's problematic. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable buying a ticket again. That's the conversation. We want a robust societal conversation where we may not agree. We may not have the right way to go about it. But to avoid that is very, very disturbing. And it actually connects to another statement that you hear very often in the art world, art for art's sake. This is actually very connected to that. The idea that art is floating somewhere in middle of air and it is some outer body ethereal experience that should not be connected with the temporal and with the everyday, muddiness of life. And even if it displays muddiness, that is just a full suspend reality, right? Or disbelief. So this goes, so art's sake, what is art's sake? Art is an abstraction of life. So you cannot remove it from life. If it is not connected to life, it's not art. In fact, art is a pathway for you to understand these complexities of human beings with greater clarity. And if art has not allowed you to do that, then you have to challenge art. Why don't we challenge art? Art has to be challenged. Artists making art have to be challenged. You don't accept it because it's pretty or because it suits you. You just cannot do that. So I think it goes to this whole thing. I remember speaking to a politician some time ago, and when I was speaking about sexual harassment and sexual abuse, she said, you know what? Unfortunately, politicians just don't understand it. It's true of, I think, Indian society. We still don't understand what harassment is. What harassment is in language, in gesture, in sight, let alone moving it to physical spaces or worse things.
Just a quick point. I was talking to somebody and the person came up with what happens in the case of people who have died, who lived, Picasso, Charlie Chaplin, for example. And the person's argument was that he brought so much joy through his art. But there are accusations that he was sadistic, he harassed young women, including teenagers. But you have to look at these things in the cultural context. There might not have been so much stigma. He might not have known it's wrong. I just want to say, I think that's complete. That's one way artists and their supporters, that's one argument they use to escape accountability. I don't think there was any era when abuse was right. So it's not that none of these men knew that they shouldn't do. They just thought they're so powerful, their fame is so big that it'll protect them from the consequence of what they're doing.
So because everybody here is saying that the conversation is not evolved, I think in Hollywood there have been much more lengthier conversation, because we have had Bill Cosby, we had Woody Allen. In fact, Ronan Farrow has written extensively, Woody Allen's son, about how he felt that the media and the PR and even people were protecting Woody Allen to a large extent. I mean, it's his own son, who's of course a very well-known journalist writing it. And I'll come to you, because we had a conversation recently where you told me that there are filmmakers who tell you, but this guy was acquitted, so why can't I cast him?
I just wanted to actually make a quick point, very practical, at a very practical level. When people say, how can you punish the entire team of a film by boycotting it because X, the hero, was accused of a crime? If a film is a huge hit, the AD doesn't get, or the spot boy doesn't get paid extra because of that. They are going to be paid whatever they were promised at the start of the film. And if they're not going to be paid that, it is because of an exploitative system. It has nothing to do with whether the film is a hit or a flop. So all of these are just excuses that people make to really build sympathy for a film and a project that otherwise is selling itself in the name of the person who has been accused of the crime. To this question that you asked me, yes, I was telling you about this person I know who said, it's so difficult. I boycotted X, Y, and Z when there were accusations against them. But then the verdict came through and they have been acquitted. Now, what am I supposed to do? Life is very difficult these days. And each of these cases, X, Y, and Z verdict, in one case, the judge had actually said that the man had committed a rape, but accused the woman of not having objected strongly enough, and therefore acquitted the man. In another case, the man was acquitted, but if you really have empathy for women and survivors of sexual violence, and if you had read the judgment, or if you had read articles by journalists and activists who read the judgment and analyzed it, that judge had written such horrible things about women, about the survivor's mother, about the survivor herself having been flirtatious in the past, about the mother having a boyfriend, and so on and so forth. Now, are you looking to give yourself this leeway and say, oh, he's been acquitted now, I can socialize with him? Or do you have genuine empathy? This is not related to art alone. This is a general point. Ullorika, directed by Christo Tommy, two wonderful lead artists, and I fully support, endorse Urvashi, Parvati, and I think the decision to cast both of them in a film which is so rooted in gender politics is in itself a statement. I want to know from the producers and the director how they cast Alencia Lopez in a film as a character who is violent with his daughter and then gets a moment of redemption in the end. Alencia Lopez's conduct with women is women have come on the record to complain about him. He has come and apologized. He has continued to misbehave in public, not just with women. We've seen him misbehave in public with a very senior male politician from Kerala, if you remember a public function not too many months ago. And he is a perfect example of how patriarchy will close ranks to support men who misbehave even with men. Kevin Spacey being another example. Now, how was Alencia Lopez cast in the part of a man who has been violent and is getting a moment of redemption in a film that is otherwise almost impeccable in its treatment of gender politics? The minute that happens in the film, I have a question about the writers, directors, and producers' gender politics. And I think that as a journalist who's analyzing it, it is my job to point this out. Because if it is our job as journalists, as analysts, to provide context to the work of art, then the socio-political context includes the crimes that have been committed by the artists involved. Can I make a film, can I watch a film on Kashmir and only tell you that the heroine was pretty and the hero was pretty and the sky was blue and the grass was green? I can't, right? Because even if it is a seemingly mindless film, the decision to set a film in Kashmir is a political choice. So if it is my duty as an analyst to give you that context, then how can I, as a journalist and a reviewer or a member of the audience, be asked that I have to separate the art from the artist? Of course, there are complex situations like Krishna and you, Dhanya, have pointed out. Of course, there are complex situations that I myself grapple with. I didn't know, for instance, that Sean Connery is an obnoxious human being who has publicly stated that it is okay to beat up women, and in fact that women need to be beaten up occasionally. And I didn't know this till after he passed away. All right. So how do I deal with that is a big struggle. But in some cases, and we must come back to Mr. M.A. Baby, who deserves no excuses and who must be held accountable and who must be shamed. In the case of Dilip, there is no complication, no complexity. And anyone who claims that there is really trying to give themselves absolution.
I think we're too soft on the audience if we say, can we place the burden on them? Yes, I think we should place the burden on the audience too. Because when in the case of Kanye West, for example, where initially his music was all about anti-racism and things that young people related to. I don't know if Kanye West is too young for this conversation. But but when I'm just checking.
I take offense, but go
Says the young lady who just told us that she was reading J.K. Rowling in school, and I want to laugh when I got yeah.
But when he endorsed Trump, and then after that, when he started his entire music, his ideology took a complete U-turn. a large chunk of his followers started dropping out. And then the brands also responded. Adidas, I think, was one of the first brands to come and, withdraw the endorsement. He lost money. He lost the kind of social capital that he had. And we've seen that time and again. So I think if the audience respond, then the people in positions of power, either political or financially, also respond.
I want to ask Mr. Krishna something more personal, because you're the only artist in this whole segment. Rest of us are just viewers or critics of art, or like me or Pooja, very far away from art.
I am not.
Okay. But how do you actually deal with this on a daily basis also, right? Because you are interacting, you have to work with a lot of artists who, for example, there's so many from your state, Tamil Nadu itself, who have been accused of various things. It is not just sexual harassment, but hatred or Islamophobia, whatever it is. So how do you as an artist manage this?
So it's not easy at all, because you're constantly, in a way, negotiating lines, and they're not very clear, and you don't do the right thing always. Let me be brutally honest here, because it's not just sexual harassment, like you said. It's about, for example, Islamophobia, caste bigotry. Sometimes I'm also grappling with it. I'm like, okay, what do I do? In some cases, I know this person's position is violent. I call it violent. What do I do? Do I share the stage with that person? That's one. What about if people I share the stage with are sharing stages with people who are problematic? Now, do I put that burden on them? Do I have to have an expectation on the people who come on stage with me, or how they would, choices they make? I don't think I don't think is really possible. I mean, honestly, that's not possible. Though I find it difficult, I'm like sometimes, but what I try and do always is the best I can do is I make sure I'm engaging in that conversation with those individuals. If there is blatant bigotry or blatant casteism somewhere in some sort, honestly, I try not to work with the person at all. Now, if there is a place where I think that there is some learning, some conversation, some way we can make this slightly more alive, a certain amount of realization, then I work with the person, but I make sure that I'm having that chat. I make sure we are debating it, arguing it, and saying, what are we seeing? What are we not seeing? So you are constantly doing this, and you're not always doing it right. You are not. Sometimes I had caught myself accepting somebody who I didn't know, for example. I come to know later, and then I'm like, okay, I have to live with this. I have to live with this choice. But then what do you do? But I think that's the best you can do. Now, question is also this I've not resolved. Suppose I'm sharing the stage with somebody who's constantly sharing the stage with people who are accused of sexual harassment or Islamophobia or bigotry publicly. Forget about private opinions, public opinions. What do I do? Do I say that I will not have anything to do with these people on stage? I don't know. So what I do is I ask the person that question. So I have that chat with that person saying, why do you do this? How do you see this? So I think that's the most important thing, is to keep pushing that conversation. And I think in certain cases, it's black and white. I mean, I agree with Daniel saying that you can't say everything is messy. Certain cases, you have to make hard decisions. And you have to stand up and say, no, I'll have nothing to do with this individual. I don't care what it means. I'll have nothing to do with a certain organizer too. Why are we only talking about artists? What about organizers? What about producers? What about people behind? You also have to make those decisions, and say, no, I will not have anything to do. But I think there is also a room where it is more complicated, and it's a constant watching out, checking, finding out where they are. I think it's very, very important. I think I want to add one more thing, that every artist in every art form is political. One of the things that we cannot ever run away from is that there's anything non-political about anything that we do, which is called, because that's also what we are saying when we are saying we separate it. We're saying it's not political. It is completely political, both in cinema, in music, in dance. We are sending political messages. And when we are sending out political messages, I think these are also messages we are automatically sending, sometimes overtly and sometimes directly. For example, I know artists who sang songs on Rama the day, consecration happened in Ayodhya, saying this is a great day. Now, is that political or not? What? They suddenly become what, pontiffs, is it, that moment? No, they are making a political statement. And we are willing to happily accept and say, oh, that is so pious or whatever. That's your, but that's a political point. So you have to call it out. You have to call the politics out. Whether we are agreeable or disagreeable, politics is one part, but we have to call out all the politics that is embedded in the artist and the art making. We cannot run away from anything.
Okay, so I'll go to quick final thoughts. Leena, then Anna. Yeah.
Dhanya, I was just remembering what Revati, I think actor Revati, who after the Ramjay movie wrote a Facebook post, in the tone of the Hindu victimhood and all of that. And this is the Revati who was part of WCC's formation, still comes out on these issues very strongly, that we know very few women in the industry, very few senior women in the industry do that, but she does that. And I'm thankful for that voice that she lends. But then there is this face of her. How do we deal with it? If I know anybody who takes who speaks well of a Dilip movie or takes the tickets and goes watch a Dilip movie, I will definitely judge them morally. I will definitely question their morality and their opinions and their advices. But if someone I know goes out and buys a Harry Potter book, I cannot for the life of me question that person's choice, because that book is so part of my formative years of, even today when I speak of how good and evil, good and bad and the fight of evil and how to win over it, I will use Harry Potter examples, because that literature and that language is so important to me in so many ways. And I don't know how to condemn that book, but condemn the author all the time for all the kind of vicious stance that she's taking today. So this is a very very complicated place, and we'll have to leave it to each and every person to make this decision. But as a society, I think the more important thing than to have sometimes question the artist and all of that, even in your smaller groups in society, there are men who in Pasik make a very derogatory comment of women. In any workplace, in any college that you see, there are women who put down women. Are you questioning that in every day? How are you putting your voice there? These questions, I think the society has to continuously grapple with. Like I said earlier, I think that there's absolutely no complexity, no confusion in certain matters in my mind, but certain matters certainly I am struggling with. And it's not just to do with the separation of the art from the artist. Right now, for instance, since 2023 end, I have been trying to avoid products from multinational corporations that have any kind of contribution to the genocide in Palestine. I've stopped drinking certain colas. There are fast food joints I absolutely don't go to. I do not go to Starbucks. But then it got to a stage, there's a particular cosmetic product I use. And a friend of mine said, there's this app on which you can check whether that product's the company is in any way contributing to Israel, contributing to the IDF. And I found that product on that list. So how far do you go? Life is very difficult. It isn't, I don't think it'll be possible for me to boycott every single one of those products. But I have thought about this at length. I have discussed it with like-minded friends and arrived at what I believe is a solution for us, which is that I am trying my best to buy local products from small manufacturers, home cooks, handicrafts persons, etc. Is it possible in the arts to do the same thing? Like you said, there's this video in which you find that every single person that you know, every single artist that you've admired, if it turns out has been accused in some form or the other, and newer stories are coming out about people we've known from history. What do you do? Some things we can have clarity about. Some things we have to at a personal level figure out. But the fact that it bothers me, I think is important. And I see friends who say, tell me it bothers them. And I think they're like-minded people who are on the same plane as I am. Whereas when someone tells me, oh, come on, you're being so anal about this. What is you buying one cola drink going to make a difference to the genocide? I think I'm judging that person. And that person as a consumer of that product is no different from a member of the audience who says, I don't give a damn. I will separate the art from the artist because I am only going to be entertained. Because to answer one of the questions that was raised on this show, how long do you punish a person for a crime that they have committed? Maybe they were convicted, maybe they never were, but if the woman had given a very credible testimony and chose not to go to court, chose not to file a police complaint, how long do you punish the artist? And while I don't have an answer to that question, I do want to leave the viewers with a question that is as complicated, and I hope that that governs your decision. How long is the woman punished for the crime that was committed to her? I remember the very first man who touched me inappropriately when I was a little girl of probably 4 or 5 years old. I remember the first man who flashed me publicly on a street in Delhi. And I think I might have been 7 or 8 years old. I remember, this doesn't mean that every single moment of my life I am thinking about them, but the fact that I remember means it is trauma. And the graver the crime, the more the trauma that the woman deals with. So when I say how long is the woman punished, I don't mean just how long is society ostracizing and stigmatizing her, but do you realize that when he commits that crime, he is leaving her with a lifetime of trauma? Why are you so invested in the question of how long we punished a man and not invested in the question of how long a woman suffers when she is the survivor of such a crime? So I would urge the audience to think about this question. And to all of us in this room, I think that this is not just about separating art from artists, but I think as journalists also, we are grappling with the question of, do you separate the journalism from the journalist? I have grown up reading some journalists who have written beautifully about gender and against patriarchy. And then I met them as a professional journalist and discovered that they're sexual predators. Should I, when I make a list of the greatest journalists of all time in India, put their names on those lists? If I am asked to profile them, should I not give the context of the crimes they've committed or the misconduct that women have faced from them? If there was never a public complaint, but I'm aware of this, is it my responsibility to not go and try and look for women who might speak? These are difficult questions. These are challenges, but life ain't easy. And as much as we speak about the art and the artist, we have to speak about this in our profession also.
That's a fantastic point, right? I just want to end by saying that those people who are always advocating on behalf of men like Dilip, saying separate the art and the artist, are also those people who are forever questioning the women who perhaps would have gotten a role in a movie in which some man who is accused of a crime is also part of it. They're like, why did you choose to act in this movie? Without taking into consideration that their chances are few, that they hardly get opportunities, and when they do get that opportunity, it is the onus is not on them to then assure that everybody on the set does not have accusations against them. You want to say something, Mr. Krishna?
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. What we also forget is that when women come out accusing these men of this kind of behavior, they are the first set of people who are pushed completely to the corner and completely removed from their occupation, their opportunities. We forget that they are the ones who are denied everything. And this is happening across sport, from journalism to music to cinema, to name it. We are not talking about that. We are never discussing that the person who is actually saying, I have been sexually abused, is the person who is targeted. So that's also a question that we're not asking. And I think that's very important. And I want to add one more thing to this whole notion of, how long. I think it's also true. What have we done as a society to create an environment that is safe? What have we done as a society to create a safe environment for people who are not in power? It could be gender, it could be caste, it could be anything, right? We have not created that environment. And without creating that environment, creating enough safe spaces, creating enough checks and balances, we are then going about and saying, okay, what do we do? So I think that's completely wrong. I, for example, had one, we spoke about Picasso. So I just reminded me, there's a composition, for example, I've stopped singing. I love the composition. It's musically stunning, but there are lines in it that are deeply problematic. So what do I do? So I just stopped singing them. So actually a young musician came and asked me this question in public. Said, there's this composition. I love the composition, but what do I do with this line? Can I change the line? Let me add another layer of complexity there. Do I have a right to change the line of a composition composed 150 years ago? Because today it is present in public and it conveys a different meaning in a different context. So what does that individual do? I suggest stay away from it. Don't touch it. So that's one. There's one thing that I always never understood. For example, the issue of caste, when you discuss caste. And I always believed that women will be the first set of people who will understand it. Because men practically face no kind of discrimination in life, if you take economy out of it. I've always felt that they're the first ones who will figure it out, how discrimination can be in sight, can be in word, can be in action, can be in everything, right? And I've met Savarna women in like so many numbers and they just don't get it. They just don't seem to see. And I'm like, how can you not get it? With you. So why I'm saying this is there's another thing that is happening today is that you are willing to be sensitive to one kind of abuse or discrimination, but you're completely willing to ignore the existence of others. It's not just a question of interconnectedness. It is a willful act. That's what I want to say. It is not like these people do not know. It's willfully done. And I'm saying that also is a deep problem. Because the moment you're willing to say, I only recognize this because I resonate with it or, I participate in that community, I'm not willing to address the rest. You are actually creating a bigger problem and not seeing the fact that this entire culture of misogyny, of casteism, of racism, of power is overflowing from area to area, from societal structures to another. So I think that is something we have to see as a whole together on our attitude towards oppression, towards power, towards, the way people are honestly made speechless, that they can't say anything, right? I think that's very important. And I think finally, the one thing we cannot accept is denying that it has happened. I think that's the worst. To say, no, it's not happening at all. I think that can definitely not happen.
Okay, so I think this will be the longest South Central ever. And I hope that the audiences do stay back to listen. We'll quickly go to the recommendations. Everybody, this has to be very quick recommendations. No explaining it.
Can I go?
Yes.
Samskara. It is a 1965 novel by U.R. Ananthamurthy. It was translated to English much later on. It's a great time to read Banu Mushtaq, etc., etc. So yeah, that was quick.
Anna, quick.
Andamal, the Tamil film, which I recently watched. And now that I have, I'm going to look for the Perumal Murugan story on which it is based. And reco number 2, because I'm currently studying Malayalam, my syllabus just covered Safalami Yatra, which is a poem by N.N. Kakkad, who I have only discovered through my studies. It's extremely poignant. It is about a person confronting his mortality. So if you can find an English translation, you're a non-Malayalam speaker, please do. Otherwise, if you're a Malayali and you can read the language, very moving.
So this is a bit like carrying coal to Newcastle, as I have two hosts sitting in Bangalore. But the book Heart Lamp by Banu Mushtaq totally grabbed my heart. And it's a very difficult book to make it straight into my heart because so much of acclaim, etc. So, that's so Heart Lamp's lovely. And then I recommend a film on Amazon, which I saw 2 days ago. It's an old film. It's a year old. It's Seeds of the Sacred Fig. It's an Iranian film. And it kind of just speaks very eloquently of the personal and the political being one. So that's lovely. It's a bit thrilling as well. So that's nice. And and there's another wonderful book. I don't know if you all are economic enthusiasts, but that's my final recommendation. It's called Apostles of Development. It's by a scholar called David Engerman. It's a thick book and it maps half a dozen economists who went to study at Cambridge who are from South Asia. That's Lal Jayawardene, Rahman Sobhan, Amartya Sen, Manmohan Singh, and Jagdish Bhagwati, and Mehbubul Haq from Pakistan. And it argues that they changed the entire debate around economics, and they actually pushed much more of economics than the first world would like to acknowledge. So that's like, it's a great thing. There are people, there's economic theory, and there is global politics. So that's my recommendation. Apostles of Development by David Eggman.
Leena?
So my recommendation is the book, The Art of the Con by Anthony M. Emor. It records the biggest art scams in the past century. And I also want to recommend the panel conversation between Prakash Raj and Dhanya discussing the art and the politics, which is something in line of our discussion here.
I did come prepared with recommendations, so I'm just going out of memory. I would recommend Aruna Roy's memoir called The Personal is Political, because I think it grapples with a lot of issues that we are discussing today in different ways, and also what does activism mean for a person from privilege? What does it mean to be a woman in the world of politics and activism and in the intersection of all that? So I would like to recommend Aruna Roy's memoir, The Personal is Political.
I have two quick recommendations. One is a Palestinian author. His name is Raja Shehadeh, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's a small book called Language of War and Language of Peace. It's a collection of two of his presentations in university, which talks about how the language itself, how you talk about insurgents, or how you talk about terrorists, how you talk about refugees, the words itself have changed over the years, and that reflects who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed. My second recommendation is a small one. This is Ronan Farrow's article in The Hollywood Reporter, where he writes, My Father Woody Allen and the Danger of Questions Unasked. So it's a son writing about separating the art and the artist, and I think everybody should read. Thank you very much, TM Krishna, Anna Vetticad, Leena Reghunath, Pooja Prasanna. Thank you to the producer of South Central, Bhuvan Malik. Thank you to production assistant Ajay R. Thank you to our editor Jasim Ali, the years of the show Maria Teresa Raju, and our social media head Yana Choksky. Remember, a new episode drops every Friday, and write to us at southcentral@thenewsminute.com.